Well, good morning, everybody. Back again on the ROS Media channel. If you don't know who I am, my name is Andy Benson. I am the head of the Republic of Old Souls Media platform and the Freedom Plan here at Republic of Old Souls. I'm back with my good friend Ian Clifford, who is our founder and president of the Republic of Old Souls. And today on the Protocol Pep Talk, we're going to talk about pensions. I know that there are many people out there who have pensions, and maybe they're thinking that their retirement is safe, it's secure, and maybe what we're going to talk about today is going to be a real eye-opener to how volatile that pension may well be. You know, you think back historically over the years, I suppose probably one of the biggest years that we would think about would be the 2008 crash, where trillions were wiped out in people's pensions, and there was absolutely nothing that they could do about that. Why was that? Why was there no recourse if that money was theirs and if it was safe? Well, we're going to talk about that today. So great to have you with us, Ian.
Well, good day, everybody. And, for a lot of people who don't know my background, they won't be aware that I was once what's called a pensioner trustee. That meant that I was the guy that managed pensions for thousands of other people. And I did that for nearly 8 years with a great deal of depth of knowledge of how pensions work. I also hold, sadly, I don't use them anymore, but under the Chartered Insurance Institute, I hold the highest qualification for pension trustee and pension management. So I think I know what I'm talking about. Because okay. I immersed myself in this, and it was a big part of what I did back many years ago when I was doing financial services. So for those people who may want to doubt whether I know what I'm talking about, I do have some credibility here, and I don't want to big myself up, but I was regarded as one of the experts in pensions back in my financial services days. So I have a deep knowledge of this. And one of the reasons why I stopped doing the wealth management, fund management, custody, trusteeship role that I used to run, not just me on my own, but I had a staff of 200, was because I could see the writing was on the wall when it comes to what I'm going to be talking about today. And I didn't like it. And I still don't like it. And because I know where we're leading, where it's heading to. So we'll talk a bit more about that, but I just wanted to set the scene here. You know, I haven't just read a little guide on pensions and now I'm thinking I'm the expert. I have a deep knowledge of pensions and the structure of pensions. No matter, they're all different types of pensions. It's not one thing. It's those. There are all different types. There's occupational pensions, which are linked to your employment. There's defined benefit pensions. There's non-profit pensions. There's government pensions. There's personal pensions. There's all different varieties of personal pensions. There's self-invested pensions. So to say pensions is like saying cars. How many types of car are there? There's lots of types of car. They all travel down the road, hopefully, if the engine works. But there are all different varieties of them. And pensions are no different. There are many, many types of pensions. And in different countries, there are different types of pensions to the UK pension scene. So it's not one thing that we're talking about. It's not a pension is the same for everybody. Everybody who's got a pension, you can put them into categories of types of pension, but they all have the same problem. Doesn't matter what you call them. If you think of them as a car, they've all got a big problem with the engine that the manufacturer is not telling you about.
Okay, I love that analogy. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the UK Pension Liberation Protocol. So this is specifically targeted at people with UK pensions. As Ian's mentioned, there are many other pensions, and different countries have different options. You've got 401ks in the States and things like that. So we're going to talk a little bit more today about UK pensions, and in particular, how you can use a selection of the protocols that we have. We've spoken about this on individual interviews, that our protocols, they are standalone protocols in their own right. But when you link them together in certain ways, there's a lot of remedy that can be had by using those structures. And today we're going to talk about how you can take some of those protocols and how linked together they can provide you with a real remedy to a huge problem that Ian has seen over the years and is still moving at a fast rate. And if you don't do something about it, you may find that your retirement is not what you hoped for. So maybe we'll talk about the problem first, Ian. You mentioned about this great taking, didn't you? Can you just describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, this is fun. This is the problem. It's all about the great taking. Now, I didn't write this book or make the documentary, but I could have done, because I was aware of this many years ago. It's one of the reasons I stopped what I was doing, because I morally couldn't carry on with it, right? The Great Taking, it's written by David Webb, and if you look in our ebook, and I think it's on our it's on the slides and the handouts from our webinar that goes with this interview, you can find it, or you can just go on YouTube and type in The Great Taking, and what you'll find is David Webb, who is a financial services expert, talking about the custody of assets. Now, a lot of people won't have a clue what I'm talking about, right? But I'm going to try and explain it, because it's fun. It's really fundamentally important. In the same way as when you go and open a bank account and you deposit your savings or your paycheck or your profits from your transaction or whatever it is in a bank account, the common belief is that the money, let's just call it money. We know from other interviews we don't have any money. We only have ledgers. But the digits that are in that bank account, or you see them on the bank statement, or they're on the screen if you're looking on a computer, if you're looking at the value of your account, those digits, you think they're yours, right? So if the bank goes into insolvency, you probably think that you're going to be able to draw those out and go and put them somewhere else. Well, the harsh reality is that banks, when they what's called bail in, and there are many examples of bail-ins, what that means is that all of the digits in all of the accounts are just hoovered up by the bank, and they use those digits on their balance sheet as their own assets. So you don't have any rights. You are in fact an unsecured creditor of the bank. Unsecured meaning that you've got no rights. You can't turn up in a bankruptcy of the bank and say, I'm a creditor, I want to get my digits back from this bankruptcy of the bank, because the bankruptcy trustee will say, well, you're not a creditor, you're an unsecured creditor, which means that you've got a promise of being able to use the digits, but you don't actually have any rights to use them. So a lot of people don't realize that that's how the banks work. And the reason why it works like that is because all you did was deposit a security. So you deposited it, the bank said, thank you, we're going to hold that on our balance sheet. So they now have that security you deposited, and they create a matching liability on the other side of the balance sheet. And that's what you see in the account. It's this matching liability, this debt, which is what you see in the account. So you think that this is what you deposited, but actually you deposited this, the asset, and they showed you a debt in the account and called it your balance. Well, the asset that you put in there belongs to the bank because it's theirs, because they are nominees for the account holders. So this word of nominee comes back in again, you see. The nominee for the true holder of the credit is the bank. So the bank gets to use the assets, the deposits that you put in with them for their own profit. And if they get themselves into difficulty, they just take the assets because they are nominees and they've booked them in their accounts as theirs. So let's now move that one level up and say, well, what happens with a pension? So in a pension, and it doesn't really matter who the financial services company is that provides it, because they are ultimately all operating in the same way. And by the way, they're pretty much all owned by the cabal at the top. If you want to do even further research on this, you'll find that all of the big financial services companies are pretty much owned by the same organizations at the top. So although they are all called different names and they all have their own offices and their own websites and their own staff and their own everything, they are actually controlled by a handful at the top, which is what happens across nearly every corporate marketplace. It's all owned by a handful at the very, very top. And you can see this if you look at BlackRock, for example.
Yeah, go to BlackRock, go to Vanguard and look at the percentages of ownership on any companies. You think that Jeff Bezos owns most of Amazon? Think again. He's not a majority shareholder.
So the whole thing, the whole marketplace looks diverse. It looks like, oh yeah, you know, there's 50 providers of pensions in the UK or whatever the number is. Surely that all can't be at risk if something happens. Well, I'm telling you, it all is at risk.
Yeah.
Because they're all controlled by the same people at the very, very top. And if you believe that those people at the very, very top have got your interests at heart, then you need to stick around a bit and have a much better look at the problem and get involved deeply in the reality, which is that they don't have your interests at heart. They have their interests at heart, not yours. And that's just the reality of the situation, right? So when you're looking at a pension, the problem is that the pension, the value of the pension, no matter what type of pension it is, and it doesn't matter what it says on the statement that you receive every year from the operator of the pension, every single pension, with no exceptions that I can think of, has to purchase financial instruments. Now, without going, too deeply into the whole list of financial instruments, people would think, what is he talking about now? This is not an orchestra with a violin and a tuba and a guitar and stuff like that. No, financial instruments are basically contracts. Let's just call them contracts. They are contracts where the financial services institution, which in the jargon parlance of financial services are known as custodians, the custodians are always banks. So now we're talking State Street, Wilmington, BNY Mellon. There's a whole list of custodians, right? SEI, I could go on and list out, 20 or 30 of them. Again, they're all owned by the same people at the very top. But they provide a service of holding the financial instruments, which are contracts that are therefore representative of things like stocks and shares.
Okay.
You know what they are, Buying stocks and shares, buying bonds. So that's buying debt instruments from companies that issue debt. That is buying property investments, all sorts of REITs and all kinds of stuff, which are all to do with the different financial instruments that you can access. ETFs, exchange traded funds. There's a whole list of instruments that pensioner trustees, that's the manager of a pension, like a fund manager, you have a pensioner trustee that manages the pension for all the account holders of the pension. So you picture the scene. You might have 1,000 account holders. You might have 100,000. You might have 500,000 account holders, and all of the pension fund is invested in all different types of markets, financial markets, property, shares, bonds, ETFs that invest in all sorts of things, international investments, UK investments, North American investments, Japanese investments. The list goes on and on and on. There's about 3,000 exchange traded funds that all trade in different things, right? Now, these aren't companies that are buying and selling products and goods and service. No, these are investment companies. Their whole purpose is to invest in things for a profit, and you can buy the instrument that gives you the access to the profit share that you believe you're entitled to. So it's like buying shares in British Petroleum, or buying shares in RTI, or buying shares in Coca-Cola, to make it to give it more context for people might understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So the pensioner trustee's job is to make sure that all of the account holders have got the assets, that's the financial instruments, that are compliant to pension law, because pension law is a subject all on its own. The law of pensions is a great big book of regulatory stuff, right? You can't just do what you like if you're a pensioner trustee.
Yeah.
There's a whole range of restrictions, right, to give it the veneer of protection.
I'm going to say just that false safety or that false security. Okay.
It's an amazing deception, because if you go into it and if you wanted to operate as a professional in pensions, you would probably spend a good few years getting qualified before you can actually do the job, and then you would never be at the top of the organization, because it would take you years and years and years to get to the top of any organization. And when you get to the top, you probably won't know that despite all of the training, all of the compliance safeguards, and all of the manual of rules and regulations that are supposed to protect the interests of the account holder, that the account holder has never had any protection. And the reason why, and this is the crux of the problem, right? All of those financial instruments, in the same way as a bank account, the bank owns the assets. You deposit your digits in the bank and you think they're yours. Well, it's the same problem for the pensions. The financial instruments are controlled and owned by the custodian and managed by a pensioner trustee or a fund manager, or both. So you get your statement through and it says you've got, and a lot of people have got this, £1 million in their pension fund, and they think, well, that's all right, I can start converting that into an income, and I don't need to worry about my financial future because I've got £1 million pension fund. Yeah. Well, who does that million belong to? And that's the problem. It all belongs to the custodians. And that is what David Webb exposes in his documentary, The Great Taking. And it's not just pensions, it's any investment account. So you go to your wealth manager and say, I've got some money to invest here. Can you help me invest it somewhere? And they come up with all these different investment options for you. And they're all basically the same, but they're operated by different financial services companies. All of those instruments in your investment portfolio are also owned by the custodian. So if you think you've got a pension, the harsh reality of it is you don't really. What you have is like an unsecured claim on the pension fund. It's the same as the bank. You've got an unsecured creditor claim. In the same way as in a pension, you've got an unsecured claim, which if the whole market crashes, and I'm here to tell you one day you're going to wake up and all you're going to see on the news is every single world market has crashed, and all of these pensions and investments have been wiped out.
That's this great reset that we hear about, isn't it? Yeah. So, I mean, that's quite a scary thought for many people when they consider that they've been, working 40, 50 hours a week for 40 years of their life, and they've religiously been, putting money into their pensions so that they can enjoy their retirement. So in terms of the actual, this custodial ownership that you talk about of these financial instruments, you mentioned something there called fungible bulk. Can you just explain what that is? Because, I could have a pension, you could have a pension, Joe down the road could have a pension, and he's got his stuff invested into, A, B, and C stocks and bonds and CDs or whatever it is he's got invested into. I might have mine in something completely different based on the professional that advised me what to put my pension money into. So does that mean that they're all completely separate, or because you talk about this bulking, what does that mean?
Well, what they do, you see, and this is another, it depends who you are and how you look at this, right? But if you're in the market yourself as a financial professional, you will tell everybody, because that's what you've been trained to believe, right? You've been programmed to believe this, that if you bring 1,000 individual subscribers, investors together, and you put all of their 1,000 subscriptions into a pot, and then from that pot, you go out and buy investment assets, the instruments, stock, shares, bonds, ETFs, CDs, all manner of the whole list of permitted investments that the pension fund can put their the collective pot into, that is going to reduce the risk that you might be taking if you went and did that yourself. If you went and opened an account and then you decided that you were going to pick your own investment instruments out and hold them yourself, which you, by the way, you can't do because the regulations don't allow you to do that. So even if you wanted to do it, you wouldn't be permitted to do it in the law in the UK Financial Services and Markets Act. You are not permitted to do that. Because
that's convenient, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. So you are corralled into these what's called collective investments, which are basically a pool of investors come together, and they all put their money in the middle. And in the middle, you have a manager and a custodian and a whole range of other so-called professionals that are now going to manage the investment pool or collective. And they are going to go out and buy financial instruments, but they're not going to buy them in your name. They're going to buy them in the name of the pension pool. So if it's the XYZ pension fund, they're not going to buy the financial instruments for Ian Clifford or for Andy Benson. No, they're going to buy the instruments for the XYZ pension fund. That's fungibility, right?
That's like me taking all of my hard-earned cash, which we won't talk about cash, but I'm just using this as an illustration. That's like me getting a big black money box and putting all my money in that money box, locking it tightly, me keeping the key, thinking I've got the key to my money box, I'm okay. And now somebody taking that black money box and throwing it into a huge vat with 1,000 other black money boxes that all look the same.
Yep.
And turning them all around and me not knowing which is mine, isn't it? I've got my key, I feel safe, but there's no way of me being able to track and trace where is my money? Where has it been invested? That's kind of what you're saying here. So, and I'm assuming then if that's the case, if I'm not allowed to do this myself, I can't go out and I can't invest myself. Like you said, they corral you into doing it this way. Does that mean then that the custodian bank is the owner of this, or am I still the owner of this? How does that work?
So all the banks are operating as nominees and custodians of the assets, the instruments, the stock, shares, bonds, ETFs, REITs, CDs, CDOs, any list. There's a whole list of these things.
Yeah.
So let me just clarify something, right? Because some people are going to say, oh, but Ian, I've got a self-invested personal pension and I can invest in whatever I want. Yeah, you can. But when you put your contribution in and you think you're being very diligent and very smart, and you may well be at one level, go and buy all these different assets which are permitted to go and buy. But when you buy those assets, though, you are now commingling your subscription from your own individual pension with all these other people that are buying into the same asset class. It's what they call it in the financial jargon. They call them asset classes. But they are all collectively purchased. So you are not individually buying anything. You are buying what you believe are rights to a share of a collective pool of money, which is now being invested in some asset somewhere, whatever it might be. But you think you own it individually, but in reality you don't. So it's another deception that fools people into believing that they've got more control over their pension because they decide where they're going to invest,
where it's going to go. Yeah,
3% here, 5% there, 20% there. They believe that they've now taken control. They don't need a fund manager anymore because they're going to be their own fund manager, their own pension fund manager. And a lot of people have started to do that in the last 20 odd years.
right.
And it's very, very popular. But the problem is, again, that once you instruct your custodian, because there is always a custodian, to go and buy this, that, and the other asset class that you want, the custodian is going to go, yeah, fine, that's all right. Well, we'll just add that to our balance sheet, shall we? Because that's now ours. And that's bottom line. What is going on here? In the same way as the banks, they take your instrument that you now want to buy, or they take the digits that you come from your pension to go and buy these financial instruments. But all of those financial instruments ultimately belong to them, not you. And that is the great taking. It's an illusion. It's a deception that you think you've actually got rights over your pension, when in reality you don't have any rights that would stand up in a courtroom. If the custodian goes into insolvency with billions of assets that have now gone down the tubes to zero, you're standing there with an unsecured creditor position, which is nothing in the law. You literally have nothing. That's the problem.
We talk about standing a lot, don't we, in the protocols that we have, and using the system to your advantage, but you've got to have the right standing. And it sounds to me here like, as a pension holder, you have no standing at all.
No, you've got absolutely no standing whatsoever. And very, very interestingly, in my very long and bitter fight and battle with the FCA, I have challenged them on 2 previous occasions, which they have declined, by the way. I want to say this because it means a lot to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm the guy, allegedly, that is out there to disadvantage and defraud people, according to them, right?
Yeah.
And according to all these other naysayers, right? And I don't make any secret of it because people have been saying it for 15 years. But I'm actually the guy who blew the whistle to the what was the Financial Services Authority, now the Financial Conduct Authority, about the top banks that I was working with because of their practices. I'm the whistleblower who actually brought to the regulator what I thought was information that they didn't already know about, right? Of course, they knew all about it, and they are part of it. They're in collaboration with all the top banks. In fact, they're run by the top banks. So I didn't know that many years ago because I didn't have that experience or knowledge back then. So anyway, you might be thinking, what's this got to do with pensions? Well, it's got a lot to do with it, right? Because in order to make it legitimate or look legitimate, the financial regulator is never going to warn you about the risk that we've just been talking about.
Right.
Now, given that the financial regulator that employs like 20-odd thousand people and is one of the biggest government offices in the UK, with more power than nearly any other branch of the government, more powers than HMRC, more powers than the local government or the court system. If you go and have a look into the powers, the hierarchy of power, it's with the number 1 on the list is pretty much the Financial Conduct Authority. They have special dispensatory powers handed to them by Parliament, right? So you might be thinking, well, again, Ian, what on earth are you talking about? Why has this got anything to do with pensions? And I'm going to explain what it's got to do with pensions. You see, if you want to put billions, literally billions a year into pensions, and you want to fool the masses, you've got to have a regulatory framework that you can trust,
Yeah.
Well, it's not possible that there can be this systemic risk in pensions, Ian, because the financial regulator, they would be warning everybody about it, wouldn't they?
Mm-hmm.
Would they? I've challenged them twice to have a debate about this and about banking and about mortgages and about all the things that we talk about on our platform. And they refused to have the debate. Now, if they were so confident of their position as the watchdog for the consumer, which is how they hold themselves out in the market, as don't worry about financial regulation, we've got your back. Well, they haven't got your back, I can tell you. They have got the back of the banks, and the big services companies, and the people at the very top of the pyramid. That's whose backs they've got. But they pretend that they're looking after you, because wouldn't you think that if you don't have any rights in your pension, literally you have zero rights when push comes to shove, that they would be there sorting that out for you? Don't you think that that would be something that they should be going to do?
Should be top of the list, shouldn't it, really?
Yeah, and prevent the custodians from having the ownership rights of all the investment assets that you think belong ultimately to you, when in fact they actually belong to the custodians, and the custodians are owned by others above them.
Okay, well, that's scary stuff. We don't want anybody to get freaked out by this, because yes, there is a systemic problem here. We can see that been going on for decades, but there is a solution to this as well. And that's really what we want to start talking about now, because the solution to this, and we've spoken about this on previous interviews, haven't we, Ian, that we're not doing, this is not a loophole. This is not avoidance of anything. You're not going to get into trouble. We're not talking about cashing out your pensions when you can't. We're not talking about any of that. One of the things that we want to talk about here is the 25% PCLS. And this stands for the pension commencement lump sum. This is not our rules. This is their rules. So we're playing by the book here, guys, but we're using the protocols and legislation here to our advantage. So do you want to just explain a little bit about this PCLS, Ian, and where does this 25% figure come from? What are the mechanics behind this?
Yeah, well, you see the pitch that the pension industry's used over the years, and sadly I was part of it, so I know what the pitch used to be. Yeah. The pitch was you can contribute your part of your income, let's just call it income for common language, into a pension scheme. And guess what? If you put £10,000 into a pension fund and you had a profit, let's say you were running a business or you were self-employed, you could put 10,000 into your pension fund, and that 10,000 would be knocked off your profit for the year. So it effectively would reduce the amount of taxes that you had to pay on the profit. So you've reduced your tax bill considerably by investing in a pension. And guess what? It gets even better. This is the pitch that all of the pension salesmen used to use, right? At the other end, when you get, up to the age of used to be over 50, it's now over 55. Yeah, you can take out a big lump sum, tax-free. So you get tax relief, meaning that you get a tax advantage on the way in. And then later on, when you want to start drawing your pension out, you can take a big lump sum out at the other end, which means that you've basically got a huge tax shelter, a huge tax advantage. And wouldn't it be good if you put a big percentage of your annual income into a pension? Because that's very smart, right? That's what the pitch used to be, right? Now, the reality of it, and it may even be worse than that, because you might not have had a choice, because your employer said, well, we're going to take 5% a month of your salary out, and we're going to put it in a scheme. Yeah. You basically haven't got a choice. Yeah. Or if you elect to opt out, then there's all sorts of other consequences. And then the government in the last sort of 10, 15 years, in their ultimate cabal wisdom, made it compulsory that all employers had to run pension schemes for their employees, right? So they want to corral even more people into these traps that they've set, like herding a load of sheep into a pen without the sheep realizing that they're in a pen. So that the tax-free cash is basically a 25% of the value of the pension fund, your account value, what you think is yours, but we've established it's not yours. It belongs to the custodians, because that's all described in the Great Taking documentary. And now you can use that 25% for whatever you want to use it for. There are no taxes when you withdraw 25% of the pension fund value, your account value. And you can go and do what you like with it. You can put it all on the 330 at Kempton Park if you wanted to, if you really wanted to. Or you could be very smart and use it wisely. And that's what we're going to talk about. And now what's happening is gradually, as the next few years unfold, you won't be able to take 25% out at the age of 55. They've already moved it from 50 now to 55. It's going to go up to 58 in a couple of years' time. So if you are over 50, then you might be wanting to pay attention to this. If you're over 55, which a lot of us are, then there's a big population out there of over 55s that you should be paying attention to this, even if you don't do anything about it. My goal is to make you aware of the problem that you didn't know you had, and then show you what the solution is, or what a solution is. It's not the only solution. It's just this is a solution, which I think has a lot of merit.
So you've got the opportunity to take 25% out, tax-free, leave the other 75% in there. It's now a question of, well, what do I do with that 25%? You spoke about blowing it on the races, or you could also use it wisely. So let's talk a little bit about using it wisely next. And we're going to start talking a little bit now about something that maybe you've heard us talk about on other interviews. These are our two particular documents that come up quite frequently because they are pivotal to what you can do for your financial freedom. HJR 192, House Joint Resolution 192, and then also publication 1212. This is the correction pathway. This is using that 25% wisely. Can you just, for the benefit of anybody that doesn't know what HJR 192 and publication 1212 is, could you just talk a little bit about that, Ian, and why that has an impact on what we're talking about here for a pension protocol?
Yeah, so HJR 192, House Joint Resolution 192, was enacted in 1933 and in the United States Senate by James Traficant, who was at the time the senator for Ohio. And he read out a statement. You can look it up on the internet, HJR 192. You can actually get the speech that he read out in the Senate, which basically was a major shift in the landscape of how money markets and money-related things work. So there is no money. There is only ledgers. There is no substance that you could pick up and move from one place to another that backs the money. What we have is we have currency, and currency has sprung into existence through deposits that have all pretty much come from the people. So there is an energy deposit that is what is backing the money system. So if you think of money, well, what it actually is, is it a medium of exchange? Can I exchange it with someone else and they take it? Yep, you can do that. Does it have any substance to it? Well, the answer to that is not really. It only has some substance because of the perception that it's worth something, right?
Yeah.
So HJR 192 without going, because we could do a whole interview just on HJR 192.
Yeah, I'm sure we could.
Keep it fairly concise. What used to be backing money was gold, and they replaced gold with the energy of the people. So if you've not heard me describe this before, you're going to think to yourself, how can you take gold away and replace it with energy? How do you do that? You know, are they going to come around and plug something into us to take our energy? No, they're going to use what's called negotiable instruments.
Yeah.
So every time we do a banking transaction, we are effectively issuing a negotiable instrument. And the banks love negotiable instruments because they then get to use them on their balance sheet as if they were theirs, in the same way as the custodians love you when you come and say you want to open a pension account and put your 40 years worth of hard-earned money into their account, because they're going to go, well, thanks, Matt, you've just given us basically you've given them your energy. If you think what money is, it's currency. It's based on energy. So whatever your energy input is, that creates the financial instrument that then gets traded by the banks. But they hold these instruments as if they were theirs. And that's where the House Joint Resolution 192 took the gold away, replaced it with negotiable instruments that are issued by the person, which is the birth certificate entity. So that's the name that you'll find on the driving license and the passport and the bank card and the gravestone and all that, all in capital letters. It is a person, not one of the people. One of the people is a living man, woman, and a person is a artificial construct that is going to operate on what we describe as the monopoly board of commerce, because it's like a public monopoly board. And in the private, you've got the living man, woman, that is the source of the energy, the true creditor, the true owner of the energy. And on the monopoly board, you've got this person that is like an artificial construct that does commerce, that gets involved in commerce. And big part of the commerce it's going to get involved in is issuing negotiable instruments, strangely enough, as a banker, because it has the credentials of a banker, because under the 1882 Bills of Exchange Act, it is able to issue negotiable instruments. And that's what, when you get a bank account and you subscribe to it, you're issuing negotiable instruments. When you make bank payments out of your bank account, you are creating new financial instruments, negotiable instruments. And all of these negotiable instruments are backed by your energy. So that's what House Joint Resolution 192. It shifted gold-backed money into negotiable instrument-backed money, which is the, go one step further, securities. So without you knowing it, you are a securities banker.
We're securitizing that with our labor, with our energy, with the work that we do, aren't we? There's no other way. There's no other value to it, is there?
No, it's because it's a promise. See what it is. It's like you made a promise to pay someone in the future. That is a negotiable instrument, a security, because it's based on your promise. It's like a contractual promise. I'm going to pay you £50 in the future. You can't pay now because there's no money to pay from. All you can do is give a promise to pay in the future, which is the negotiable instrument. And the banks love them because they get to use them for their own purposes, and they operate as the nominee for the true creator of the energy, which is the living man, woman, who's operating as an agent for the person. The person is the entity that's got the bank account, and the living man, woman is the agent for it that sits away from the Monopoly Board of Commerce, can't step on that Monopoly Board because their living man, woman is the real creditor and holder in due course of the credit can't step on an artificial game board called Monopoly because it's artificial. You try and step on something artificial, you're gonna fall over, yeah. So you can't step on that board, but you can put a piece on the board, which is relevant to what we're going to talk about in a moment. You can put a piece on that Monopoly board, which you already have. You've already done this, you see, without knowing it. You put the person on the Monopoly board of commerce. You thought the person was you. Well, it isn't you. It's just, it has the name that you use. So you've put this construct on an artificial Monopoly board that you think is you, that isn't you. And the banks are using that construct to issue negotiable instruments, which all are sitting on the Monopoly board as accounting ledgers, because that's really the whole system is made up of ledgers, debits on one side and credits on the other. And that's the whole nature of the Monopoly board. It's a subject all in its own right. So basically what you've got is the banks are operating as a nominee for you. That's you as the real you, the living you, yeah?
Yep.
And you're an agent for this construct, a person that is going to issue all these negotiable instruments on the Monopoly board. And if you want to play the game with a great deal more skill, let's play the game of Monopoly, when you get your 25%, which is a ledger, but let's just call it money.
Yep.
What can you do with it? Could you do something with it which would multiply its value, and that value would be owned by you, the true creditor?
Gotcha. Okay. So rather than having these banks that are these brokers or middlemen, so to speak, being the holders of these financial instruments, the owners of them, essentially, and we don't get to own or control any of that, then if you can pull this 25% out, now that we understand what that 25% actually is and how, although we've done it in a little bit of a nutshell here, what money actually is, based on the documents that we've spoken about, House Joint Resolution 192 and obviously the publication 1212. Let's talk now a little bit about the actual remedy to this then, because when you understand how money works, and I know that we could go into that in a whole nother interview, and maybe we will do that if people want to know the real depths of how this works. You spoke about negotiable instruments. You've spoken about how everything is really just an IOU, isn't it? When it comes to these negotiable instruments, and that they are, you mentioned promises to pay, and if people don't really believe that or understand that, just go and take a £10 note out your wallet or take a £20 note out your wallet and read the small print. Read what it says at the top, because at the top it will say, I promise to pay the bearer the sum of £10 or £20. Everything is an IOU. So if we've got this 25% that we can take out of a pension, then the next step to this is to do with standing, isn't it? Because if you don't have the right standing, none of this works. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about this remedy. We talk about a fiduciary remedy. And we're going to talk a little bit now about OID filings, in particular 1099 OID filings, and something else called the 945 master record. If you could just walk us through what those are, Ian, and how they really do apply, not just to what we've spoken about in the past to do with the infinite money protocol, but how would they apply in this scenario of a pension and utilizing this 25% that you can take out, using it for the good?
Okay, so we talked a little bit on the last segment of this about the fact that you already have a living man-woman entity. Yeah, that's you. Hopefully you're alive if you're watching this. You're not a robot. And you have the person, which is this artificial construct that you are operating on the Monopoly board as its agent. So there is already a separation there, yeah?
Yeah.
You didn't realize it. You thought the name on the birth certificate, bank card, driving license, passport was you. Well, it isn't you, it's an artificial construct.
It's not.
So when you realize that, then the next step of the evolution of your ability to play Monopoly better is to realize that you can put other pieces on the Monopoly board. You don't have to stay just with the person playing Monopoly, which is the person not being you. You can have another piece. So imagine if you could play Monopoly with 10 pieces on the board. You might win the game. Yeah? So you don't have to be restricted to one piece on the Monopoly board. You can put another piece on there. And that other piece is a international grantor trust. And the way it's set up is it's set up in such a way where it gives you a fiduciary control over what this trust. So think of it like an account that you can control on the Monopoly board of commerce, which is all artificial. But that account that you can control because you set it up so that you are what's called the grantor, which is the creator of the trust, and you become the trustee, which means that the trustee, the person, the birth certificate entity, on the driving license, bank card, etc., becomes the trustee of a new entity that you're going to put on the Monopoly board. And that now starts to give you a lot of options, because you no longer have to play the game of Monopoly with the person that is constrained by legislation, constrained by taxes, constrained by reporting everything to the government. No, you've got another piece on the Monopoly board that doesn't have to comply with all of that, because it's got a special categorization. It has an exemption from all of those things because of its standing, its status stroke standard. And it's able to provide you with the opportunity to buy real assets, not financial instruments, not shares, bonds, CDs, ETFs that are all owned by the custodians. No, it can own the trust, the grantor trust, can actually own the physical asset and have proper legal title ownership of the asset. No longer owned by the custodians, no longer controlled by the big financial services companies that may take all of your pension fund whenever they feel like doing it, based upon wrapping it up in the excuse that there's been a worldwide crash of all the investment markets. And, you know, sorry, we couldn't do anything about it. It wasn't our fault, it was the market. So suddenly the bank goes bust and your pension is gone.
So when you talk about real assets, I mean, what are we talking about here? Gold, silver? Are these the type of assets that we're talking about?
Yep. And I once looked into this because, you know, again, it was sadly lots of things I used to do. Was my job years ago was to help people to expand their wealth, right? So wealthy people would come to me with their investment, an amount that they had to invest or a cash flow or something. And my job was to make sure that they didn't lose all their money and actually increase its value relative to inflation. Because that is the problem, is inflation erodes the value of money, right? So that was my job in a nutshell. I had to find things that would increase at a faster pace than inflation, because if they are appreciating slower than inflation, then in real terms your wealth is going down, not up.
Not up,
On the Monopoly board, it's you've got to stay ahead of the game, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at and I once did this study, it's quite interesting. Was interesting to me, if you take three assets, if you took gold, if you took land that had a purpose, not farmland or a brownfield where you can't use it, but land that had a purpose where there's maybe buildings on it, and if you took fine art, I'm not talking about postcards that you might buy in the shop. I'm talking about proper art that gets traded in the auctions. Yeah,
as in original paintings, that type of thing. Yeah,
paintings.
yeah.
Now, if you had bought 1/3 physical gold, 1/3 land, and 1/3 fine art, and you did it 200 or 300 years ago, that portfolio would have outperformed anything. Cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, it doesn't matter what it is. Over that, I mean, those things weren't available 200 years ago. But all the things that were available, stock, shares, bonds, these things have been available for a long time. That simple portfolio would have outperformed anything. You don't need stockbrokers, wizards with computers to invest your money for you. You just buy 1/3 gold, 1/3 art, and 1/3 land, and that's going to see you through every boom and bust and crash that's ever been experienced in the last 200 years. So physical assets are a way of protecting against systemic risk. That's the markets collapsing overnight. You wake up and literally your investments are gone because the markets have collapsed. And that's happened many, many times in history. And if you own physical gold, for example, or if you owned silver, which is kind of an interesting asset class at the moment, if you wanted to own land, because you could buy into land, if you wanted to own fine art and other things, which are described as physical, then those things are likely to weather the storm. They don't disappear. They're not artificial, are they? They're real.
No.
So everything else is artificial. Bitcoin, stock shares, XRP, all these wonderful names of cryptocurrencies that people have invented that look like you can get rich if you put your money into them. Well, what are they? They're just artificial. There's nothing real about them, right?
No.
But a piece of gold or a piece of silver held in a vault is real, yeah? It doesn't disappear if the markets crash. It's still there.
No. Okay. So talk to me a little bit about this 945 master record, because there's going to be people here that are maybe thinking, okay, I kind of get that, but even with my 25% of my pension, it's a fairly modest one. I don't really feel that puts me in a class of person who can do that, who can buy gold, buy land, buy fine art. So what do I do with it? And where does the 1099 OID and this 945 come into play with that 25% that I've drawn out?
Yeah, and this part is the booster that's going to make all the difference, right? If you think of it's like the turbo booster in your car, right? You push that button and this is going to turbo your program. So let's go through the steps, right? So you draw down the 25% of the pension fund, which is perfectly lawful to do it. No one's going to be knocking your door saying, hey, you've just, busted your pension and we want, we're going to clap you in irons because you've broken the law. No, you're drawing 25% out, which is exactly what's in the legislation, and it's your right to do it. And your pension fund custodian is not going to argue with you, say, no, you haven't got, we can't do that. We can't allow you to do that because the law doesn't allow us. They're going to say, where do you want us to send it? So you get them to send it to the bank account of the person, right? And so you tell your bank, I'm just going to cash in 25% of my pension. So let's say it's 100,000 for easy numbers. And we're going to cash in 25,000 just to make it easy numbers. So 25,000 arrives in the bank account in the name of the person. And what you're going to do with that is you're going to set up this construct, this second piece on the monopoly board of commerce. You're going to set up an international grantor trust. We call it the Asset Fortress Protocol. And what you're then going to do is your bank account in the name of the person is going to make a subscription to your private treasury bank account that is within your Asset Fortress Protocol. So let me go through that again because it might be confusing, right? So you've cashed 25% of your pension fund out and arriving in your bank account is £25,000 in the bank account of the person.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's your NatWest or your Barclays or whatever. Yep.
Yep. Now,
Okay.
from that account, you are going to subscribe to another bank account that is in the name of your Asset Fortress Protocol International Grantor Trust.
Okay.
So you're going to make a legitimate subscription from your bank account in the name of the person to the bank account in the name of the trust, the Asset Fortress Protocol Trust, which, by the way, is your private treasury.
Okay.
Now, when you make that transaction happen, the bank account that you have subscribed from, what is it done? It's
Well, they're nominees, aren't they? So they've issued another security, surely.
Well, yeah, the account holder, the person that is the banker, has issued a negotiable instrument to the value of 25,000 to the bank account that belongs to the Asset Fortress Protocol.
Yep.
All right. So all you've done in common parlance language is made a transfer from one bank account to another bank account.
Yep.
The structure is different because the first bank account is in the name of the person. That's your regular bank account that you might be using. The second bank account is in the name of the trust. These are separate. These are not the same.
Okay.
You haven't got two bank accounts with these, two different bank accounts in the name of the person. You've got one bank account in the name of the person, and you got another bank account in the name of the trust.
Gotcha.
Now, the transaction of 25,000 moving from one account ledger to another account ledger, because all it really is ledgers. That creates a situation whereby the trust, the Asset Fortress Protocol, can work with our tax filing office.
Okay.
To recoup the 25,000 that was subscribed from bank account number 1 in the name of the person to bank account number 2 in the name of the Asset Fortress Protocol. Why? Because the bank account provider of bank account number 1 is operating as a nominee for the living man woman who's the agent for the body corporate, the account holder. And that is where the IRS publication 1212 comes in.
Okay.
So a recoupment of the 25,000, which we call it abandoned credit, because I think it frames it quite well. Another trust, which is the trust that you've got to do your tax filings, so this is your tax recoupment filings, is going to file what we had on the screen just now, 1099 OID.
Yep. So that's going back here, guys.
Yeah, that's it. 1099 OID. Okay, so what is that? Well, what it is a correction of the ledgers that the United States Treasury are holding on behalf of the banks who are all operating as nominees for the true creditors. The true creditor is the living man woman. Remember HJR 192, the living man woman's energy has been used by the Monopoly Board of Commerce to run the board. Yeah, it's the energy that runs the board, right? So what happened was the bank account provider that received the 25,000 from the pension fund and then is subscribed it to the Asset Fortress Protocol, the bank account that made that transaction, the banks were operating as nominees for the true owner of the credit, which is the living man or woman? Well, the same living man or woman is the beneficiary of the Asset Fortress Protocol.
Okay.
So there's a commonality there, right?
Mm.
So the bank account that made the transaction, the bank operated as a nominee for the true creditor. Well, who is the true creditor? The living man or woman is the true creditor. And what you've done by moving the funds from one bank account in the name of the person to the second bank account in the name of the Asset Fortress Protocol Trust, whatever that trust is called, you decide what you want to call it. What you've actually done there is the living man woman has not changed its position. It's not on the monopoly board. It's off the monopoly board. It's in what they call the private realm. But in the public realm, there are two pieces, yeah? The person and the Asset Fortress Protocol, which is a trust. The trustee is the person. The grantor is the person. But the beneficiary, the true owner of the credit, is the living man woman who never changes their position. They just stay where they are. They don't go on the board. They don't try and go on the board. They don't need to go on the board, on the monopoly board, because they have a superior standing as the holder in due course, the true creditor that put the energy onto the monopoly board, and it's owed back to them. So the bank that is operating as a nominee, as it describes in IRS publication 1212, as the nominee, it gets to use that credit. And typically what happens is the banks that operate the bank accounts, what they do is they bundle these bank accounts up into what's known as securities. So here we are again with securities, right?
Sounds very similar to the pension bundling that you spoke about.
It's very similar. So there's all these different classifications of securities going on. Well, the bank that made that 25,000 transfer, let's call it a transfer possible, they are making profit by opening the bank account. Why? Because the negotiable instruments that make up that account, they are basically bundling them all up, a bit like the custodians of the pension, and they're making profits with using those securities that they've bundled up. Now, the actual profits that are being made are often not being made over the long term by the bank that you've got the bank account with, because what they do deceptively and very cleverly is they sell the securities to a higher bank, and that would be an investment bank. Okay. So now we're getting into the if you watch the movies, Wall Street with Michael Douglas, and if you watch The Big Short with Brad Pitt, now we're talking about the elite bankers. These are, and this is not my terminology, this is what other people call them, the sort of gods of the universe. The Jamie Dimons of the world who run Goldman Sachs, and they're some of the richest people on the planet in the game of ledgers, because what the investment banks are going to do is they are ultimately going to purchase the securities from the bank that provided the bank account, the 25,000 bank account. The investment banks are going to purchase these securities from the clearing banks. That's the bank you have your £25,000 sitting in before you transfer it away. Now, the investment banks, now this is the thing that a lot of people don't realize, right? Is that the investment banks can't just purchase those securities for nothing. Okay. Not only do they have to purchase them from the clearing banks, and now we're going to get into the 945 master record. Yes. The investment bank that is purchased the securities from the clearing banks are what you've got the bank account with. Investment banks are sitting way above them in the hierarchy. The investment bank has to pay tax for the use of the securities. Okay. The investment bank has now become the nominee for the true creditor. Right? The true creditor is the living man or woman. Again, is not on the monopoly board.
No.
The person issued the security, that's the negotiable instrument, the 25,000 that was transferred to the Asset Fortress Protocol bank account. The nominee originally was the clearing bank. So bank A, bank number one.
Yeah.
Bank number two is an investment bank who's purchased that security from bank number one. Bank number two rubs its hands because it can now trade that security, and there's lots of profit to be made. But in order to use that security, and this is where House Joint Resolution 192 comes in, they are using your energy, and they have to pay a rental for the use of your energy as the nominee to the United States Treasury.
This is where the tax comes in then, yeah?
That's where tax, that is why all of these things are tax matters.
Okay.
The investment bank is paying taxes to the United States Treasury. Why? Well, because the United States Treasury is the trustee for the bankruptcy of the United States Incorporated. So if you are a debtor, and in this example, the investment bank is a debtor because it is an artificial construct. It is on the public side of the ledger. It sits on the monopoly board as a debtor because everything on the monopoly board is a debtor. i.e. it is a debtor to the United States trustee in bankruptcy. The United States Treasury, I should say.
Okay.
So if you are using the assets that originated from another debtor, which is the person, and you're on the Monopoly Board of Commerce as an investment bank, as a debtor, and you are using as a nominee the energy that really belongs to the living man woman who's not on the Monopoly Board. Remember, the living man woman's not on the Monopoly Board.
I do, yeah.
You get to you have to pay tax as the nominee because you've taken the nominee position. And that tax that you are paying if you're an investment bank has to be subscribed to the IRS, the United States Treasury, and it's called the 945 Master Record. And within that Master Record is the module of taxes that are being paid for the use of these securities.
Okay.
So that's the short story, right? There is a longer one, but that's the short story.
Okay. So I've got my 25%. I've taken it from my pension, whoever it may be, Scottish Widows or Prudential or whatever it was that I had it from. It's now sitting in my NatWest account. I've now moved that, quote unquote, from my NatWest account into my Asset Fortress bank account, which is a private bank account, because that's not got this person on it. It's not got the fictitious driving license, birth certificate, passport, all caps version of me on that bank account. It's a trust bank account in the name of a trust. So that could be, the Andrew John Benson Trust. It could be whatever it is, but that's a trust bank account. But what you're saying is, because of what we've kind of learned here about how, and I know we haven't really dug into it a great deal. If you really want to understand how this part works, go back and watch Ian and I's interview on the Infinite Money Protocol. We go into it in a lot more detail there. But essentially what we're saying here is I haven't physically moved anything. I've not moved £25,000. We've already established historically that there is no money of substance. That disappeared in 1933. Now is only money of form now. That is backed by our energy. So me now moving that, all I've done is create another negotiable instrument. And because of what you've spoken about through the 1099 OID, how the IRS works, the master record, the 945 master record, in that the banks are nominees and that they have to pay taxes for the privilege of using the negotiable instruments that we create through our own living energy. They have to pay taxes to the IRS for that. Using that framework, that 25,000 that I've moved, which is now sitting in my Asset Fortress bank account and can be used again. But the movement of that created a security that the banks are using. They're paying taxes on that. And through an OID filing under the right framework and the right standing, and verifying that with the 945 master record, I can also recoup that 25,000 that was moved while still maintaining the 25,000 that is in my Asset Fortress bank account. That's what you're saying here, isn't it?
Yeah. So you started with 25 in your account number 1. You moved it to account number 2, and then you recouped 25, and you're, you know, in just round numbers, you've now got 50. Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a multiplier here, isn't there? Clearly.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, in your Asset Fortress protocol, what you then do is you purchase the physical assets. So now your Asset Fortress protocol is going to get true legal title of real assets that are not held by the custodians. Right? So now you've got control over the value. That 50,000 now is now invested in real assets. Yeah, that aren't instruments that can disappear on a computer screen when the markets crash. They're physical. They're real. You've got custodial control over them because you are operating as the trustee of the Asset Fortress protocol. So you've now become the custodian of your own assets,
of my own,
that are physical, not digital, and that you control. Right now, the next part of this, which maybe we're going too fast, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that every time the Asset Fortress protocol gets 25,000 of recoupment funds and then purchases physical assets with it, that is another recoupment available.
Another security created, isn't it? Because in order to buy, if I went out and said, okay, I want to buy 50,000 or 25,000 pounds worth of gold, then I've had to make that transaction. I've had to move that 25K to whichever company or whichever organization I'm buying the gold from in exchange for the physical bars. But I've made another movement. I've made another security. So are you saying that I can recoup that as well, or?
So the Asset Fortress is going to purchase some gold. Let's just keep it really simple. It's received 25,000 as a subscription. It's got 25,000 of cash, in inverted commas. It then says, okay, what I'm going to do, or you as the trustee of it says, right, I'm going to go and buy 25,000 of physical gold from a gold dealer. And they're going to sit it in their vault in the name of the Asset Fortress protocol. You can go to the vault. You can open the door and look at it.
Like in Harry Potter.
Just like in Harry Potter. I used to have
the banks in Harry Potter.
In a physical vault, not digits. Somebody telling me that I've got some gold. I can actually go and look at it.
Not e-gold, real gold.
Real gold, right? Now, the Asset Fortress protocol made that transaction, and it had to subscribe to the gold dealer with fiat currency. That currency is energy. So now the Asset Fortress protocol can recoup that 25,000 gold purchase, and then when that recoupment comes in, it can go and do it again. It can buy another 25,000 of gold or silver or art or land, and then it can recoup that and keep on doing it year by year by year.
I think there might be a few people that their minds are getting a little bit blown here with this, which is okay. Certainly mine was when I first started learning about this. But what fundamental difference there is here to me is that we're not just recycling negotiable instruments here. We are buying physical assets with those negotiable instruments while recycling them. So these assets, once you've got these assets, they're real, they're tangible, they have value to them, and historically over time, they will increase in value. That, you know, that's how it's always gone. But you're still in this cycle of recoupment whilst you're stashing away these tangibles, these real world assets for your future.
Yeah, think of Monopoly. If let's suppose that you went round the Monopoly board, and when you got back to the beginning, you got $200.
Yeah.
And you bought a asset with that $200. Then you went round the board and you got another $200. You bought another asset. So this is like exactly like that. You are playing Monopoly. You are purchasing an asset with something which is intangible. You're purchasing a real physical asset with something that is just an accounting ledger, which is the negotiable instrument, debts and credits on ledgers. So you're exchanging something artificial. Let's suppose that you could spend the Monopoly money in the real world. You can't. No one's going to take it. But in this game, you can take artificial money that doesn't really have any substance. It's only got form. It has nothing backing it apart from your energy. And you can acquire real assets that you can pick up. And you can actually have complete control of them. And you can multiply up the value of your physical assets. So ultimately, your pension fund, if it was £1 million to begin with, just for round numbers, and you took 250,000 out, and you subscribed that to your Asset Fortress protocol, you've now got a 250,000 annual cycle of asset acquisition and recoupment. So within 4 years, round numbers, you've now got $1 million in physical assets, and you've got 75,000 left in the pension fund where it started, where you can't take that out. You can only take out annual distributions of income from it. So that is still in the system. That is still at risk. That 75% part of the 750,000 in this example. Start with $1 million, take 250 out in tax-free cash, move it into the Asset Fortress protocol, recoup it, and every time you recoup, you purchase new physical assets, which you shift the risk from a systemic risk, 100% risk at the moment. People think that their pension's low risk. I say it's 100% at risk because it's not owned by you, to an Asset Fortress protocol, which is 100% under your control. And the instruments that you've purchased are real, tangible, physical assets that aren't going to disappear if the markets crash.
No. You'd still have a property, you'd still have land, you'd still have the fine art, you'd still have the gold, the silver, whatever it was that you purchased, because it's real. That's amazing in terms of how that works. There were a couple of other things here that you've linked into this as well, though, to do with, you speak about the general executor, sovereign immunity. We talk about the envoy protocol. Could you just briefly explain? And again, you know, the envoy protocol is something that is an interview in its own right, because there's a lot of detail that goes into that. But how does that interlink with what we're talking about here as a solution to the risk of pensions?
So the envoy protocol is basically it's a declaration of correcting the standing of the living man, right? So you've got the living, breathing man or woman who is ultimately the creditor that doesn't operate on the Monopoly Board of Commerce.
No.
Now, a lot of people have tried to send documents to the IRS, to the establishment. Oh, look, I'm not this person. This birth certificate entity, this artificial construct entity, that's not me. And, I don't want to be associated with it anymore. And if you want to put the person in jail, well, that's not me because I'm not the person, right? A lot of people have tried that, right?
Yeah.
And sadly, a lot of people are still trying it. And I can tell you, it doesn't work. The reason it doesn't work is because when your mum and dad issued the birth certificate with the registrar, they put their signatures on it, or the mum or the dad put a signature on the birth certificate. That created this artificial construct, which the law sees as an artificial entity. It's a decedent entity. It's dead. It doesn't live and breathe, right? But the living man, woman who's operating as the agent for it gives it life on the monopoly board.
Yeah.
So this artificial entity that is going to go round the monopoly board is tied to the living man or woman through a construct in the law called agency.
Yeah.
Now, I'll give you an example of what agency is, right? If you set up a company and you are the director of the company, you are now the agent of the company.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go out and you do all sorts of crazy stuff as the agent of the company, if the company is drawn into a lawsuit because it did some crazy stuff, well, who is liable for the crazy behavior? The agent,
would be, wouldn't you? The director would be, yeah,
the director. So when you are operating when the living man, woman is operating as the agent for the body corporate artificial construct person, name on the birth certificate, that agency is the problem with why all these people that go into the courtroom saying, I'm not the birth certificate name, you've got no jurisdiction over me, so good luck with your prison sentence or your parking fine or your speeding fine or your bankruptcy or your mortgage foreclosure. Good luck with that, because I am not that artificial entity. Well, the problem is that the courts say, yeah, they don't actually tell you this, but but you're the agent, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So you're equally liable for all the liabilities of the person, aren't you? They don't tell you that in the courtroom, because they don't
there is that tie.
There is that tie.
Is what you're saying.
So,
okay.
How do you break the tie? Well, you break the tie by making a declaration that the living man, woman is no longer going to operate as the agent for the body corporate.
Okay.
Within the framework that it's already been set up. So you change the framework. So the living man, woman is going to make a declaration that they are in fact alive and the person is dead, which it is. The crown, let's call it the crown, where the body corporate is registered, is presumed that the living man, woman is happy to be the agent for the body corporate that is on the monopoly board, using the name of the body corporate in exactly the way it's been set up by the birth certificate entity, and that they're quite happy to take on all of the liabilities of the body corporate sitting on the monopoly board. But when you make a declaration that you're wiping the board clean with a declaration, you as a living man, woman are saying, no, I've just realized that this artificial entity over here, which I thought was me, is not me, and using its name, which doesn't belong to me, by the way, it belongs to the Crown, because it's a trade name of the Crown that's being used on the monopoly board. I can rescind that by making a declaration. So the living man, woman makes a declaration that they no longer want to use that body corporate person entity that is operating on the monopoly board, using it in fraud. Why? Because the name doesn't belong to the living man, woman. The surname, the all caps name on the birth certificate, that doesn't belong to the living man or woman. No, it belongs to the Crown, because it's registered to them, along with the reference number on the corner of the birth certificate, and it's a different date. You look at the birth certificate. It's not recorded on the day you were born. It's recorded weeks later or sometimes months later.
Yeah.
So it's not you. It is this artificial entity. So basically, in a long story short, the correction of standing means that the living man, woman, occupies the office of the general executor of the decedent person. Now, that's a tongue twister, and a lot of people are going to get very confused. So the body corporate person, everything on the monopoly board has an office. I don't mean a Regis office that you pay 50 quid a week to rent. I'm talking about it is another construct on the monopoly board. Everything has an office, right? The office of the Secretary of State, the office of the Prime Minister.
So when someone holds office,
you hold an office.
They're not sitting there in an office at a desk, are they? That is it's almost a position, isn't it? It's a form of standing.
It's a form of standing. Exactly what it is. Yeah. So the office of the person is then occupied by the living man or woman who is going to occupy that office as the general executor of the person, because the person is an artificial construct that is regarded by the system as a decedent, dead. If it's dead, then it has to be operating in probate.
Okay.
So the artificial entity that is regarded by the Crown as a decedent estate, by the way, everything on the monopoly board is dead.
Yeah.
Why? Because it can't be alive, can it? No. It's artificial. It's not real. It has to be dead. So you see, the living occupies the office which controls the decedent estate under probate law, because every person is a decedent. The living and the dead. The living is not on the monopoly board. Never on the monopoly board.
No.
Everything on the monopoly board is dead and bankrupt.
Okay. So with this separation, then, what would be the benefits to somebody making that separation, saying, okay, I no longer accept that I'm the agent for this decedent estate. I now declare that I am taking the office of the general executor of that decedent estate. A lot of technical sort of terminology there that people may partially grasp, but in real world terms, when it comes to, okay, I did the pension thing. I set up my asset fortress, got that bank account, that trust bank account set up. I'm in this 4-year cycle. I'm spending, recouping, buying my gold, buying my silver. I'm doing all these things. What are the benefits for me making this separation in relation to that pension protocol?
So this is structural, right? So let's go back to the person. The person has a bank account. The person is going to operate as the trustee and the grantor of the asset fortress protocol, the same entity, the decedent estate. Yeah. If you do not correct the standing of the relationship between the living man, woman, the true holder of the credit, and the trustee of the asset fortress protocol, trustee and grantor, it would still work very, very well, and nobody would probably ever be able to challenge it. But if the trustee, which is the person, is now controlled by the living man or woman, by the correction of the standing, now you've got complete control of the trustee and the grantor of the asset fortress protocol. The living man or woman who is not on the monopoly board, can't be on there, has now taken complete control of the trustee, grantor of the asset fortress itself as a trust construct, and the assets that belong to the trust that are physical, that are being accumulated at a rate of 25% of the value of the original pension per year, Doesn't have to stop at year 4, by the way. It can carry on going for as long as you want it to carry on going. So now what you've done is, if you start with the problem, right? The problem is, we started with the problem. The custodian of the pension fund has all the control.
Yes.
We've now watered that control down by the financial engineering that I've been talking about here, the Asset Fortress Protocol, 1099 OID recoupments, setting up the Envoy protocol to get the superior standing, and then buying physical assets using the recoupment of abandoned credit to purchase physical assets. So what you've done is, you've ultimately, if you start from year 1, you've got 100% risk in the pension fund. Let's say it's £1 million. Let's say you did this for 10 years.
Yeah.
You've now shifted. You've still got 750,000 invested after 10 years, or whatever the value of that is, and hopefully they haven't taken that from you yet,
in
as
it's
in the great taking. But however long this process and this program goes on for, that's up to you. You are building a physical asset base in your asset fortress, which after 4 years could be worth more than the pension, the original pension itself. After 10 years, it's worth like 3 times more.
Yep.
And you've now got 100% control of those assets.
Gotcha.
And you don't really care. Well, you probably do care, but it's not going to devastate you if the market crashes.
No.
And the banks that are operating as custodians just take all your pension fund away.
Yeah,
because you've now
that's all happening on the monopoly board, isn't it? That's the thing. All of that's happening on the monopoly board, and you've got all of your assets completely off the monopoly board. These are physical assets. It doesn't matter what way the market swings. You've still got those assets. Could be a forever home with a piece of land attached to it, where you and your family are living peacefully. Whatever it is that you consider to be a priority asset to you. Maybe you don't want to buy gold and silver. Maybe you do want to put it into property. You know, there's lots of different things you could do with it. But I can see now this true separation in that you also want to add that extra layer of protection by making sure that the body corporate, all caps person who is grantor and trustee of your asset fortress is not controlled by the Crown. That's what you're saying, isn't it? Well, that's how I'm hearing it anyway.
What you've done is you've played an advanced level game of Monopoly.
Yeah.
That's what you've done. You've taken the pieces that are available, you've put them on the board for your benefit, and you've used the accounting ledgers, which is what the whole money system is based on, for your advantage, and you've acquired the very assets which they don't want you to acquire. Yeah. They want you to buy Bitcoin. They want you to buy XRP. They want you to buy, Amazon shares and all this kind of stuff. They want you to do that because they know ultimately that all belongs to them. They're luring all these people in to a trap that is not obvious to see. I saw it years ago. David Webb has seen it. He's done his whole documentary on it. But David Webb doesn't tell you what you can do to solve the problem.
No.
What we've just been explaining here is how is one way of solving the problem. There are other ways of doing it.
Yeah.
If you now were aware of what the problem really is, financial engineering is what I do.
Yeah.
I look at the problem. I look at all the pieces that are available, and then I come up with a structure that is designed to solve whatever the problem is. That's what I do. I've been doing it all my career.
So what I'm seeing here is, as we've got on screen here, this is the ultimate hedge, isn't it? In terms of you really securing assets for the future. You've got, providing your pension doesn't collapse, but you've got the ability here to create dual streams of income. One inside your asset fortress, your pension if it's still there, where hopefully, if it is okay, you can still draw down an income from the 75% that's left. But you're hedging your bets here. You're being smart with that 25%, multiplying that year on year, buying physical assets with it, putting them into your asset fortress private bank account and into that trust. but then also going one step further and playing this ultimate game of Monopoly by taking away any ownership or any control that the Crown has over the corporate decedent, all caps, birth certificate version of you. Because the one thing you do have to understand is that in order to open up this asset fortress, the grantor and the trustee, if you're going to have a bank account with that, what's the bank going to ask for? They're going to want ID, aren't they? Now, I don't have any ID for me as a living man, but I do have ID for my all caps version of me. I've got my driver's license, I've got my passport. You will need those to be able to open the bank account that is attached to the asset fortress to be able to do this. So if that's owned by the Crown, ultimately, if this version of me is owned by the Crown, I don't want them to have any control over my asset fortress and that private bank account. So the envoy status, that we talk about status and standing in all of this, don't we, and how important that is. That's the ultimate game plan here. That's that ultimate shield of protection over everything that you're building here. So I absolutely love it, Ian. I know there was a lot of technical stuff that we spoke about there, but hopefully people are starting to get to grips with some of this now. I mean, if we had any kind of wrap up of this in a nutshell, what would you say would be, just bullet point by bullet point, what would be the strategic implementation of somebody doing this?
Well, we're not here to advise you on what you should do, shouldn't do, or what all your options are. We don't do that.
No.
I've come up with a financially engineered plan using all the components that we've spoken about to take somebody out of the systemic risk that they didn't even realize they were in, probably, and sitting there comfortably in the belief that they've got this big pension fund, which is going to be their safety blanket, their safety nest, if you like, for later on, when in fact, in reality, they didn't realize that they didn't own that pension in the first place, and they've got no rights. So you can't just cash the pension in and take it all out and put it into gold, because they won't let you do it, because they crowd you into and they put you in a trap. Yeah, they got you in the sheep pen, and you can't get out because there's bars all around it, right? But what they let you do is take 25%. Well, what can you do with that 25%? How can you engineer it that 25% you take out can multiply up to more than the value of the pension fund? Yeah, that sounds like extraordinary, doesn't it? How can you make 25% worth more than 100% over a short period of time? Well, you do that because you are ultimately the energy that runs the monopoly board, and you can create more and more energy through the negotiable instruments that you're issuing and then recoup them. And you can do that. That's why we call it infinite money, because the more instruments you issue, the more recoupments you can recoup. The more energy you can recoup back, which is ultimately just tax. So if you engineer it all, you take complete control of the asset fortress protocol, because you've corrected your standing, you've set it up separately on the monopoly board. It's going to be your private treasury, which the Crown, the Cabal, can't control. Not only have you done it so that it's out of their reach, your asset fortress protocol is international. It's a nation in its own right. It doesn't have to comply with the United Kingdom pension legislation, because it's not in the United Kingdom. It's operating as an international trust with its own nation status. So it's like you've moved all your wealth into a tax haven, because that's what it is. It doesn't have a tax base because it doesn't have to report, and you can control it all, but whilst being in receipt of whatever the income stream is from the 75% that you've left in the pension. And even if the pension fund that you've just moved the 25% from collapsed the day after you took the 25% out, you can still build your pension fund up and have complete control of it within the asset fortress, as opposed to under the control of the custodian and the banks. And if you think the banks are your friend, I'm telling you, because I've worked with them, they are not your friend. I am absolutely giving you a warning. If you believe that the banks are going to look after you in the Great Reset, which everybody should be aware of, that is baked in the cake, the banks are definitely not going to be looking after you. They're going to be looking after their masters.
Well, a real eye-opener today. I think for me, one of the biggest things here was the ability not just to recoup the credit that we create, those negotiable instruments, but as part of that infinite money cycle, to be able to move them into assets, into physical assets, and keep those completely separate while still doing that recoupment as well. So you're stockpiling over here stuff that's off the monopoly board, doesn't have any connection with the financial markets at all, because if it's property, if it's land, if it's art, whatever it is, obviously to some extent, I guess the physical gold will have some connection, maybe that because of the actual value based on what it's worth on the monopoly board. But the fact is, you've got it, and you've actually owned that. You have legal title to that, or legal ownership of that, not just what we were talking about earlier, where the banks are controlling and owning all the funds when it comes to your pensions. And like you said, even if your pension collapsed, the 75% that you had left, it's not going to take you another 40 years to build that back up. If you've got 25%, you can recoup that, build these assets up over a 4-year period. Recovery can be quick, and it's very strategic. So in conclusion, Ian, any last words before we let everybody go?
Well, the conclusion is that, you know, this is what we're talking about here is advanced, the advanced set of procedures to play the game of Monopoly that nobody ever explained to you. So if you're new to all of this, it might take a while for it to sink in that there is a big game going on. I think a lot of us intuitively know that this is a bit of a game, isn't it? This, like, we go out to work, we run a business, we buy and sell things. It's a bit of a game, isn't it? It's like, you know, the whole thing is a game. Well, if you're going to play the game and you're going to win the game, then you need to know how the most skillful players play the game. And I'm showing you how the skillful players play the game.
Well, thank you once again, Ian. I've enjoyed it today. It's been a real eye-opener when it comes to pensions. I hope that if anybody's watching and they have a pension, that they at least take this on board and learn a little bit more about it. This particular interview, if you're watching it right now, is no doubt on our RS Media platform for you to watch. But we also have on there individual interviews about the protocols. You know, we've spoken today about the Envoy protocol, Infinite Money. We've spoken about the Asset Fortress protocol. That's just 3 standalones there that, when linked together, can create this pension strategy for you. But we've got more than just those 3. So if you want to learn about these individually, then please head over to the ROS Media channel. Have a look at the individual interviews that Ian and I have done. We're doing them on a regular basis, breaking them down into real world situations like this. How does it affect pensions? How would it affect, you know, my family? There's lots of different things that we're doing here where we're interlinking these protocols to give you solutions to real world problems. So I hope you've enjoyed this one. We look forward to the next, and I hope you have a great day. Ian, thank you for joining us again. And for now, we will say goodbye. Take care, everybody.